Good evening, everyone. Again, I welcome one and all to today's event, Future of Architecture Post-COVID Scenarios, Chapter 1. This event is an initiative from the students of RVS for knowing the future of architecture in this stag reality of the pandemic. As we all deal with the pandemic one day at a time, there looms a large question of how our environment will change once we come out of the cocoons of our house. I invite two of our student representatives, Shreya and Jiva, from the third years to welcome you all. Over to you guys.
A very happy evening to all of you. It is a delight to be able to represent the RVS student body on this positive occasion.
As the RVS student body representatives, we and our peers were quite struck with fear about our future and initiated this event. And we believe that the same fear had been in the minds of a lot of students. And in order to raise a sense of hope and positivity, Future of Architecture was conceived.
The event was initially supposed to be only for the students of architecture, which now has magnified to all the students across the globe and also academicians. So thank you all for the overwhelming response, and we are certainly very excited about the event.
Thanks to our Honorable Chairman, Dr. K.V. Kupuswamy, Honorable Trustee, Mr. U. Vishal, our beloved Director, Mr. C.P. Stephen, respected Principal, Architect Amuda Ma'am, dear faculties, and my dear friends and student coordinators of other colleges who have made this event a grand success. A special thanks to our panelists for accepting our invitation and willing to spend their time with us.
We, the students of RVS, would like to extend our warm welcome to all our attendees and to also our eminent panelists. Future of Architecture Post-COVID Scenarios Chapter 1 is the first event being hosted by us students for all the students of architecture. We, the students of RVS Chennai, also associate ourselves as the our alternative school of architecture, as we intend to innovate at every step. I hope this event would be beneficial for all of you as much as it would be for us. So once again, thank you all for the amazing response, and from the RVS family, we extend our utmost gratitude. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Shreya and Jiva, for the wonderful start of the event. And now introducing our guests of today's webinar, we have architect Pramod Balakrishnan. He is one of the known architects based in Chennai. He is running his practice edifice for almost 3 decades now. He has indulged in large-scale housing, industrial, and education projects. He also actively devotes his time influencing young minds through a collaborative platform called CAF. Next, we have architect Sriram Ganapathy. He is a renowned architect with his Chennai-based firm called KSM Architecture. Winning many awards, KSM Architecture efficiently works towards energy and climate conservation designs. His own office space is a great example of the principles and beliefs that him and his firm share. Finally, we have architect Kishore Panikar. He is the founding partner of Architecture Red Chennai. He is well known for his pragmatic and straightforward approach to design. Architecture Red has been receiving multiple national and international awards and recently won the Trends Excellent Awards of 2019 and listed top 5 finalists of Building of the Year in Arc Daily. Now I would request architect Reeves Anthony to say a few words. Over to you, sir.
I first would like to thank the students of RVS for organizing and coming up with this interesting and important event. It's a great opportunity for me to bring together the student community from across the country. We are very excited that there have been so many people who've registered. Our Zoom registrations are now closed, and we are also live on YouTube. 1,000 registrations, 1,000 people are now connected on our Zoom webinar itself. This shows the kind of interest and the passion that our young minds have. So I would like to speak a few words about RVS Chennai, and then we would immediately go on to this interactive discussion. RVS Chennai, also known as the Alternative School of Architecture TASA, strives to change the approach in the field of architectural education. Our vision is constructed over 4 strong pillars, which provide a holistic learning for students. We focus on research, skill development, and hands-on learning through application. I would like to just say a few words about the 4 pillars of RVS. One of the first pillars we have is something that we call live projects. Our students involve themselves in the real-time construction of a socially relevant project every year. You can see on screen, on the right, we have done a small library in Surat. One of it is a housing that we have done in the outskirts of Bangalore. We believe that this exercise makes them grounded and makes them have a realistic understanding of the entire construction process. The second pillar of our strength is something we call the vertical studio. It is a national level student exchange program within interesting and unique universities of architecture and design. It gives the students to work and interact with students and faculties from across India on serious research and design projects. These are always over some urban and architectural issues from various cities. A third pillar of our strength is our summer winter schools, something that we have always loved and one of the pillars that we enjoy the most. It is a travel based experiential learning program where we have our students traveling national and international across the globe to learn various kinds of skills, crafts, and technologies from the experts from different fields. This works on fields of architecture and also allied fields of architecture. And the fourth and the newest pillar to our entire academic practice is something that we call the finishing school. It's an interesting venture that gives holistic learning for the students and making them as practicing architecture students while they're in the college. It helps them develop unique skill sets to be industry ready, to be market ready, and be practice ready when they come out of the college. It helps them in various levels of structures and services, language classes, and various other interesting software knowledge also. So these are the 4 strong pillars of RVS Academics. For more information about this, you can log on to our website, and you can also follow us on our Instagram page. Now, I kindly request all the panelists to please come on video, and we can have a look at all of them. We have 3 eminent panelists. We've already had an introduction about them. Architect Pramod sir, Architect Sriram sir, and Architect Kishore sir. I will just brief all of the participants about the process of how the webinar is being planned. With the last 3 days, we have received more than 250 to 300 questions from people, from students, from academicians, from practicing architects, young and old. So it has been nice. And what we have done is we have consolidated all these questions to around 12 to 15 to 20 questions covering various topics. And we believe that these questions will definitely be an answer to what kind of thought you're going through, what you the clarity that you want to gain. And I will be reading out each one of these questions, and the panelists will be taking those questions one by one, or they'll be taking it together to clear your heads. We are open to having more questions, but since we are a large crowd, we request you to send it to us personally, and we might take it, or we might email back to you with the answers. So now, we have all the 4 panelists with us. I think all of them are on video, I believe. Pramod sir is also there, Kishore sir and Sriram sir. Sir, thank you for joining with us. It's actually nice to see the 3 of you together in one space.
Thank you.
So let's move on to the first question. This question is definitely something that a lot of students had asked us, and also 2-3 faculty members have put. What are your individual words of advice to the students who are currently studying architecture? And there is a certain sense of fear that is brewing in their minds of their uncertain future. What should they tell themselves at these uncertain times? Many students really want to say some positive things to them. They want to talk to themselves. They have a lot of doubts. I request Architect Pramod sir to start the discussion about this question that's been put forward.
Hello.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, congratulations to RVS and the students for having done a fantastic job of networking. It shows that you have the passion and the skill in any time. So congratulations.
Thank you,
COVID-19 pandemic is nothing to worry too much about, primarily because we still don't know too much about it, and we are still learning more about it. And there is no need to really fear about the profession at this moment of time, because I think the advantage that all of us have today, including all you young students, is that there is a pause today in your journey, which would never have happened. So this pause in your journey gives you the opportunity to test out so many things, test out new hobbies, test out new skills, learn lots of things. So I don't think there's anything to fear about, because none of us know what the future is going to be. And the best way is to go forward with positivity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for making it very bang on, and I think that's something that we all love to hear. Now we'll go on to the next question, the second one. As COVID-19 impacts architects, as a COVID-19 impact, the architects and designers feel the heat as projects face an uncertain future. What are your comments? I think this is an open question to all the practices that is here. I would like architect Sriram sir to start their comments on this question. I think the other two architects can also pitch in their comments. You're on mute, sir. Can you just unmute yourself?
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah. So, yeah, hi. This is a fantastic thing. Again, I mean, I'm just repeating what Pramod said. Fantastic job. You guys are doing really good. Great. See, I agree with Pramod. I think this pandemic is probably a blip in our career graph, and there is a lot to learn from this for sure. I think there's going to be a hell of a lot of learning that we will realize. We're still learning, and we're going to learn a lot more. But we will probably come out much stronger, much wiser after this pandemic. But I believe that we just have to get on with our lives. Now, with respect to projects, for sure, because we are the guys who are like working on projects, and these projects will be at various stages. Some would be at design and inception stage. Some would have just progressed a little bit beyond. Some would be just getting into construction, and some would probably be underway. So there are some projects that would be definitely affected directly by this pandemic. Probably the hospitality, malls, retail malls, footfall will be less in such places. I mean, you can't imagine people going and watching a movie with your family now in the near future. So these projects will be affected. But residential will continue, because home is your safest place, right? That's what we're hearing all the time. Offices, commercial spaces have to carry on, because after this 2-month break, the economy is not very healthy. So we need to all work, and things have to get back to normal. Industry has to come back. Education and institution, that has to come back. So I think it's only going to be a blip. It's going to be like a pause, like what Pramod said, and things will start taking on. Maybe some projects will start climbing more gradually. Some of them might go a little faster. There will be issues of cash flow, money being in the project, and people going kind of not having enough money to do projects and so on. But it's probably going to be rough weather for 3 to 6 months, perhaps, maybe less, maybe more, can't say, but it is going to be rough for a few months. But then subsequently, man is going to survive, right? He always survives. So he just have to keep moving forward, and we will be moving forward with them. And we would probably be one of the people involved in the forward movement, being architects for the buildings. So I would say consider it a blip in the graph, and we just have to move forward.
Just to add to that, See, even before the COVID-19 impact, a certain typology of projects were already feeling the strain. I mean, areas like affordable middle income, residential real estate, commercial properties, etc. They were already being hit by a combination of excessive supply and a lack of demand, thanks to consistently dropping GDP numbers in the slowly stagnating economy. So this pandemic, like Sriram rightly said, has added hospitality and retail to the list of project typologies that were kind of stuttering already. As a practice, we were seeing these signs of a slowdown since around, say, middle of last year. This pandemic has probably fast forwarded the whole process and kind of tipped it over the cliff in some ways. So definitely projects have suffered. Many have been stalled or called off in our own practice. The uncertainty will keep it in limbo, for the next 6 months to a year or so. But one must also understand that, for an architectural practice, actual business comes usually much further down the economic pipeline. So only once the general economy is stabilized and on its way up, do sentiments to invest and spend on real estate follow. So while we may be the first to be impacted when things go bad, we will also be one of the last to gain once things start looking better. So we can only speculate now. But there's also a feeling that while things may stagnate for a while, it is unlikely to get much worse than where we are right now.
Pramod sir, would you like to add a few words on that?
Well, I think both of them have said everything, but I'll only add to say that in the career of any practice, these blips do happen, and it's the strength and the positivity of the practice to be able to go forward. So these are times of opportunity and learning even for the firms, and sometimes going back and re-looking at things that we've done. So I really think that the next 3 to 6 months, which will be a time in which we will be wondering as to where we are going to go, is also a time to look back at the work that we've done, look back at what we have, as a profession provided for society, and look at very many other things that we didn't have time to look at in that mad rush. I think it's an incredible time for all of us. If you take it without fear, if you take it with the gumption that we will get through, we will get through. We at Edifice are very, very confident about it. And 6 months down the line, I'll still be there.
Thank you. Thank you, all the three of you for sharing some light. We'll move on to the next question. This question is a little personal question to all the three offices which we got. How architecture firms are responding to COVID-19? Has your firm created an innovative solution to the current crisis, or how are you reacting to it? Within your firm and inside the firm. It's again an open question to all of you, so you can just share your thoughts of how you have restructured or the kind of measures that you had taken.
Well, like Kishore said earlier on, the impact on the real estate was beginning to show its cracks in 2019. Of course, it became magnified after this. But what this has done has shown us strengths that we never had. To give you an example, all of us are attempting to work from home, and we landed up with a competition project to be completed in 9 days, 26 acres, and from 11 locations across the country. We worked across 9 days to make this presentation. This was new learnings for us. This is absolutely new learnings. We've never done that in our 40 years. And this, I think, would help us going forward in looking at things differently. With respect to the office, well, we're still not yet open. We're still concerned about many things because many of our staff are outside of Chennai and can't travel. Some of them are in containment zones. Some are mothers who have children who don't have school. So we are very, soft to all of that. And we continue to work from home. So I think that's a great learning. I never knew we could do that. And, to run an office through a WhatsApp, because I'm not computer friendly, was like, wow, good. So those are learnings. We didn't say it was negative. We said it was positive, and we worked, and the entire team did.
Yeah, just to add to what Pramod is saying, I think one of the most damaging aspects of this pandemic is the speed at which
Kishore sir, can you just be a little more louder? I think it's not very.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. No, what I was trying to say is that one of the most damaging things of this pandemic has probably been the speed at which things have come to a halt. It's brought everything to a standstill within a matter of weeks. So, like a vehicle that's suddenly braked, passengers have been shaken and thrown around. So that was natural. Even as late as February, we would not have imagined that, we would be sitting and working from home through April and May. And, and because of this, very abrupt halt, practices have struggled to cope. And as a firm for us, we have learned a lot in the last 2 months, like Pramod said. But primarily two things that stays with me is that, firstly, the fact that technology is a great enabler. I mean, there have been enough and more tools out there for one to continue doing a large part of their work using technology, provided one is keen to seek them out. So this has kind of pushed us all out of our comfort zone and pushed us out there to kind of reach out to technology and see how it can enable us to kind of continue doing what we can do very effectively. And secondly, it's also exposed the overemphasis that we place on physical traveling and meetings related to work. The fact that pretty much the same or maybe even more effective work can be achieved with little or no spend of time and resources in traveling, that has been a huge revelation for us. And we surely will be taking a lot of these learnings into regular working once things stabilize. So we look forward to that. And that's one of the two main takeaways for us as a practice from this whole experience.
Sure, that's good. I mean, nothing much to add. They've said what it is, but it's even at KSM, we've been quite, we managed really well. We were surprised, but it is fine. I just feel that it's just been 2 months, 3 months since we've been working from home. Also because, projects slowed down. In fact, projects stopped. So, whatever work we had on our pending lists, we finished. And when the sites begin, I think a fresh set of challenges will arise. We have to see how we handle those from remote locations. There have been pluses and minuses. Yes, technology is a huge help. And since we've all been using technology, I think working from home has been quite easy as far as delivering projects are concerned and exchanging ideas and thoughts. But what we do miss is some of these over-the-table discussions, which become a little painful over a Zoom call. What you would probably wrap up in a 15, 20-minute discussion, it takes probably 2 hours and 3 hours just to exchange and communicate what your thoughts are. Your language skills are hugely tested, and your understanding of language is also hugely tested when you're doing over the phone. What a sketch would do, probably a lot of words has to replace that and so on. But I see the challenges now will come on site. And if we are not able to visit site, and if there are certain issues that we need to deal with, we'll come up with solutions, but then there would be certain challenges over there.
Definitely. I think every office, every person has looked at this pandemic in a different way. They've changed their lifestyle. They changed the way they are at home because they're all stuck at their homes. And they've definitely evolved, and they've been very resilient about how they've handled it. That's something very nice about human behavior. I think we'll move on to the next question. We are having some nice comments coming in the chat boxes also. We will be taking them. Okay, so now this question is, when all the chaos around us settles down and when fresh graduates apply for a job in your firms, what kind of skill set would help them in having the extra edge of getting that job? This is again a question I think that is from a student. Now, what should I gain? What should I have more to get that job that is available for me? So, Sriram sir, I think you can throw some light on that.
Yeah, so this is something we've been discussing internally with our colleagues also. I just changed this question a little bit in the sense, I think this is a good opportunity for people to develop new skill sets and do things that you would not have had the time or even the inclination to do. It's a good time for you to sit down and let's say, there are people who say that, I just don't get the time to read enough, or I'm not able to concentrate and read a lot of stuff. So then this is a time you could do that. You could improve your software skills, improve your drawing skills. Sometimes there are people who have met me, quite a few architects who say, I have a problem making sections. So this is a good time for you to, just improve your skill levels. It's like a learning. It's like a sabbatical. Use this time to learn. And all of us can improve things that we aren't good at, or we would like to spend some more time. And anyone with a little bit more skill is always going to be a useful person, a useful asset. It's useful for themselves. So I think it's a good time for us to be developing skills. And again, since I don't seriously believe that this pandemic is going to change the way we think, the way we live, work, play, I don't think all that is going to change. Of course, we have to be more sensitive, and it becomes another aspect that we should think about when we work design, when we work with for people, and how people work together, live together, play together. We need to be sensitive with aspects such as what the COVID has thrown up. But apart from that, I feel use this as a break where you can really develop your skills. And I really don't know whether I'll be looking at some new skill that somebody would come in, who's coming fresh after this, and when we begin to hire people, whether we're looking at somebody with maybe a pair of horns or something, nothing like that. You just have to come with your same set of skills and same set of sensibilities, and we just work. That's it. So there's nothing special. Let's not think that some aliens have landed and we are like in a position where we like one of these lovely Hollywood thrillers. I love them, but this is not one of those thrillers. I think it's going to be one of those slow movies. You have to go along with it.
I think we also had a comment from architect Harimohan Pillai about what we have asked. New skill sets from students, good communication skills, writing, not the SMS kind, speaking different languages, in time delivery, work output. Those are some of the skills that he's mentioned. I think it's nice to see that this time can be definitely used. If Pramod sir or Kishore sir would like to add something to it, you can definitely add. Is there any specific skill set that you think a student can work on or enhance himself in?
Yeah, I think like Sriram said, it's a great time for students to pick up new skill sets. And I think going forward, another thing that this crisis has done for practices is that every practice is also trying to get more and more efficient. So practices are looking at trying to get much more leaner in their working, much more efficient. So anybody with the skill to multitask will definitely have an advantage. So somebody who has the ability to dabble in a bit of design, also to dabble in a bit of understand a little bit of the structure, understand a little bit of the building services, understand what to do when he goes to site. So somebody who can multitask like that will definitely have an edge, because it allows the practice to be a little more efficient. So you can actually get those multiple layers of skills integrated into your personality and to your learning. That will, I think, add a great deal of value to the firm that is looking to hire.
I think I'll just step away from that for a bit and say that apart from the physical skill sets that you have, you need to have the skill sets of thinking. This is the first time in your life somebody's not going to question you. You're going to make the questions. You're going to seek the answers. So at Edifice, we are looking at thinking people. Skills can be developed, but if you're not a thinker, you're not one who questions, then the chances of growth are limited to the skills that you have. So I would look at people who come out with a attitude of wanting to question, wanting to learn, not afraid to ask, not afraid to be wrong. All of these things are important. The skills will get developed. Technology will change. You have to keep on improving your technology. So therefore, that is a given. But if you can't do the thinking, if you can't do the questioning, and you can't get those answers that you questioned for, then you will remain where you are with your skill set. So this is the time. I think it's a fantastic time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, all the three of you. We'll move on to the next question. We are getting a lot of chat comments. I would like to mention that the topic of the entire discussion is how we can students can take their career forward, how the changes after pandemic will be. So questions that are related to completely architecture related, we might not be able to answer them right now. So I would definitely put it on to the panelists, and we'll talk about it in the future. So the question now we are looking at is, do we need architects after the coronavirus outbreak? Will the client be willing to spend extra for the architectural services? Sir, yeah, well, you can take that. I think it's an open question to all of you.
Okay, well, if both are alive, the architect is alive and the client is also alive after the virus, then obviously both of them need each other. There is no way that a matured client will not need an architect for his projects. And it's up to us architects to make ourselves, needed by the kind of stuff that we provide for them, right? It's very important that we bring something to the table. We don't deliver what they want. We bring something more to the table so that they understand the value that an architect gives them than just solving their problem, right? So if I'm alive, we'll be there. The young ones that are alive, we'll all be there, and the clients will also be there. So I don't think there's anything to worry about. 6 months, yeah, have a holiday, yeah.
So I think the question is coming from a lot of young practices, whether the client will be willing to pay for the extra architectural services. I think there has always been an issue with the client wanting to pay, wanting to hire an architect. It is not something that is just born out of because of the pandemic alone. That's something that I think I also wanted to share. Yes, sir, please.
I just add something here. See, after this 2-month break, there have been many people I have met. Many of them are my clients also, and so they have always had this very cocky attitude, saying, I rule the world. I have the money. I have the power. I just can do anything I want. I can do any kind of project. And you guys are working for me. I mean, projects. Now, many of them are quite shaken. They're shaken, saying that there are things that are more powerful than them. There are things that are more powerful than all the money they have. Just like this, the virus has come. So I wouldn't say virus. I would just say nature. And by an extension, I would just say the environment. So now there are people who give scant respect to the environment around them, are now probably stopping and thinking and saying, hey, there's something which is far, far bigger than us. And we are really a part of it. And we are powerless in front of what nature can do to us. So I really sincerely hope that we will have a lot more sensitive people around. And as architects, one of our primary jobs is to be sensitive and be sensible with what we have, with what we are given, whether there are clients, there's a project, there are people involved, then there's the environment as well. So we need to be sensitive to it, and often we find our clients are not really being sensitive. So now I'm hoping that everyone around us, whoever we're going to be working with, are now going to be really sensitive about what is around them. So I really look forward to meeting some of these clients of mine and some of the clients that are going forward.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I think this pandemic will now even make sure the clients have better, clarity, and importance will be much more streamlined. So I think we'll move to the next one. The next one is also something very similar to what many of the people in chat box have been asking. How will the scenario change in the building industry in the wake of the pandemic? Will it be different for architects versus engineers? If yes, how? I think I'll direct this question to Architect Kishore to take it.
Yeah, so See, there will be definitive changes in the way.
One minute, Kishore. Can you just bring your mic a little closer?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, clear.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So there will be, there will be definitive changes in the way built environment is, is designed and built. We foresee new needs coming into our project briefs. For example, the need for a home office space in an apartment will probably become a norm going forward. Specific facilities and spaces for isolation, disinfection, sanitation, etc., will come into public and institutional spaces going forward. So from that standpoint, definitely there will be changes. Also have to be careful though not to get carried away, and let this new wave of inputs overpower common sense. So architects will have to drive this conversation and take a very proactive initiative, to learn and integrate these new needs into buildings. Otherwise, there's always a risk that these discussions get taken over by, a panic reaction, by clients, by project managers, leading to over design and over building as an effect of this pandemic. So one has to be kind of wary of that.
Yes, thank you. So now I think we'll start taking more questions. We'll go on to the next one. This is the same thing that we've answered. Ganesh, can you go to the next question? Yeah. In the past, after a pandemic or a disaster, cities change and have become more resilient. How do you think the cities would change post this pandemic? If possible, more specifically to Chennai.
Okay, cities are already there. You can't wipe them off the planet. All right. So what we need to do is look at local solutions for local problems within the city. All right. And those local solutions are what will help the city. And this is one area where the young architects can start looking at, where you become part of the city, part of society, look at areas which have issues that need to be resolved. You can't just knock off Manhattan because its densities are high, or you can't knock off Kannagi Nagar because people are living there and not living in great conditions. So you have to look at localized areas, look at it in a manner that as an architect, as a member of society, what is it that you can bring to? So I think those are great opportunities. Again, I keep talking about opportunities. These are new things. Architects wouldn't look at this if it was a regular exercise. You'll be just going on building buildings, right? So therefore, this is an opportunity. So each of you living in the neighborhoods that where you are, begin to look at your neighborhoods and assess your neighborhoods, etc., which again become a learning experience. And then you realize how you can, as a society, improve those short, small neighborhoods, because there is no single wand to clean and clear up everything, right? So I think every architect, every young architect, every senior architect, whoever's living in an area, look after their neighborhood, get hold of the neighborhood, see what is that they can do. And that's how the city will improve.
Just to add to what Pramod said, I think cities and urban areas will continue to remain magnets for growth. This is where people with aspirations come. This is where a lot of people looking for establishing themselves come. So cities and urban areas will continue to remain magnets. It will continue to remain a pivot around which economic engines will operate, especially in a country like India. We will continue to have challenges of how do we deal with limited urban land and growing urban population. Those challenges will continue. We cannot and should not wish away high density and mixed use neighborhoods. I think that's something we need to really internalize. They will continue to provide for sustainable solutions to our challenges. We need to, however, look closely at the questions that this pandemic has posed. For example, like what do we do about housing for the underprivileged? How are we creating humane and hygienic living conditions for them? We will need to look at these very, very critically and honestly. And this is where I feel civic authorities and architects with access to and who are working with civic authorities will need to play some sort of a leadership role. Because that's what I think has been opened up and is lying exposed for all of us to look at.
I'll just add another thing. See, it's become more and more apparent that we should all be working together, and I think architects are just one small part of this whole city building exercise. And we need to really work together. There is just it probably has opened everyone's eyes, saying that it's not that highly dense cities are bad. It can't be true, because this is like what both Pramod and Kishore have been saying. So we really have to improve things, and architects alone cannot do this. At the same time, architects are also responsible. So we need to work with people. So there need to be a lot of cohesive working. Multiple professions have to get together and work towards city building and improve matters, so that things like this that would happen later. I mean, a simple example that we were talking about the other day with some other on another forum, we were saying how Surat transformed itself as a city from being plague infested, such a clean city. So because they needed a real swift kick for them to know that things are really not good. So I think this is a really good kick for us to realize that things are not okay. Even your biggest and so-called best cities in the country are not performing well. So something is not right. So we need to do city building seriously, and architects are a part of it, an important part of it, but we are a part of it, and there are many other people who have to get together to do this.
Thank you, sir. I think
I just have another. I
yes,
just have to
please,
say one
please.
more thing. The question had engineers in it, I think.
Yes.
Did the question have engineers? I don't understand what is the problem that architects have with engineers. Right. We all work together. Be it a structural engineer, be it a mechanical engineer, be it an electrical engineer, be it an acoustic engineer, be it any engineer, right? We always have this problem, engineer. They are part of the team. So if you think they are not part of the team, you're not into the team. So I think let's get this off. Across the country, we have this whole fear, engineers will take over. Nobody's going to take over, da. You just join the gang.
Thank you, sir. It was really nice. And I think mentioning Surat is a very important point. Cities have always found ways to, I think we can even see that in the environment right around us. How, if you're not going out anywhere, if the pollution is coming down, they're even saying that the holes in the ozone layer are getting, filled or blocked. You can see, I think Kishore sir also mentioning how you can see, from real long distance, you can see the Eiffel Tower from Gurgaon. I think it's just a joke that was made, but we are seeing that how nature and the building and everything is resilient. So I definitely believe resilience is on, going to be something that we're all looking at. We'll move on to the next question. I would like to mention that a lot of questions have come in. There are more interesting questions coming one after the other. So I request all of them to stay back, listen to it. Okay, we can move to the next question. So this is a question that many students have asked us. Some of them asked us, what is the right kind of direction that students need to prepare themselves in during the pandemic? Many people have also asked, what should I do after the pandemic? What kind of post-graduation should I look at? What should I specialize in? This is something that's there. So I request one of you to definitely say, what should I do now? And what do you think I can do after some time, once I'm coming out of the institution? Kishore sir, if you can,
Yeah, so I mean, I think Pramod has covered this very, very well earlier during the talk.
It's not really audible.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I think Pramod covered this earlier in the talk very well, very, very nicely. So, I mean, I would kind of reinforce that. I would just say that look at this as a 3-month homebound break where you have the opportunity to learn and develop new skills, do something that you've always wanted to do, learn a new software or just read, like Sriram said, overthinking and creating scenarios in your head is not going to be much of much use, because this entire entity is unknown. I mean, experts around the world are struggling to find an answer. So it's best to focus on what students do best, and that is to remain curious and to pick up a new skill or read and listen to your favorite architects, urban designers, landscape designers, practices in general, gain some new insights. All this will eventually have a tremendous influence on how you shape up as a professional going forward. So that would be my 2-bit on that question.
Thank you. We'll go on to the next one. So this is also something that has been in talk for the last over a decade about how important sustainability is. What is sustainability? So the question is very straightforward. Do you think the world will become more sustainable post the pandemic? So I think I would add one. And do you think will the world will become, at least now, will we become more sustainable in our approach post the pandemic?
Simple question. Is each one of us sustainable first? If we practice sustainability amongst ourselves, then only can you talk about the world. This whole question of sustainability is just a question. Unless from our projects, only then can it be understood. So sustainable, pandemic, all of that is, begins at home.
So
Yeah,
I think, yes, please, Kishore, please.
Just to add to that, I mean, I don't think as a race we have a choice about this. I think the question should probably be rephrased as, will humankind behave more responsibly post the pandemic? Like I read somewhere, and it makes a lot of sense. It says, "Don't save the world; just take care of yourself. The world will take care of itself." So our planet is an amazing organism. It will heal itself back to health. It has done so many times in the past. It has the capability to do it again, and it's the human race that is threatened by development which is unsustainable and irresponsible. So I'm hopeful we'll become more sensitive to the environment, the way we design and build, and do whatever we can in our own little way to limit the damage that our work does that our work inflicts on the planet. So I'm hopeful we will learn from this to be a little more sensitive and responsible.
Thank you. I think that is something we all really need to look at, sustainability as a lifestyle in itself, humans being more responsible. One of the questions that's come in the chat box is also about what is the future all about? How should I prepare myself for the future? I think to orient ourselves towards a better lifestyle, like Kishore had said, are we behaving more responsibly, reasonably? I think is the right way to look forward, irrespective of what kind of fraternity that we're working in, not just being an architect, whatever our field of choice is going to be. We'll move to the next one. We have a few more questions that have always been, tackling us. This is a very simple question from small practices. Have the three practices faced similar economic recessions in the past? If yes, how have you tackled it? How have you overcome it? And how do you think this one will be any different? It's a personal question, and it's a question from many young practices who have asked.
Yeah, so I'll take that first, being the youngest of the three practices on the panel. And we have a very interesting story. So our practice started in May 2008, and sometime in September, Lehman Brothers collapsed. And then in January 2009, the Satyam scam happened. And so we were a new practice pretty much in the eye of the storm, and nobody was undertaking any new projects, and even established architects were not doing much work. So for a new practice like ours at that point in time, there was really no hope for new work. But we were lucky that there were just two of us in the firm, me and Biju, and we could forego our salaries for a few months. We had saved up in our previous jobs to set up this practice, and that helped us. We went around and met many potential clients, developers, institutions, and showed them our previous works from our past offices. Some of these clients, they humored us by giving us a site and a brief. And we made presentations to them free of cost, of course, knowing fully well that the chances of this being realized would be next to nothing, But over 4 to 6 months, we managed to build a portfolio, of all these castles in the air, these Hawa Mahals, but these being real sites and real briefs, we got a good sense of the bylaws, the challenges of our context, project costs, other aspects, which was a great learning experience for us. So it was probably one of the most creative phases of our practice, since the focus was purely on design, not on generating BOQs, not on generating construction drawings or attending project meetings, etc. So in hindsight, those presentations, meetings, developing contacts in the local fraternity, all those have shaped our practice to what it is today. So, that was our experience with the last and hopefully, the only recession we see.
Just to ask on that, the first year, which means you mean to say the first year of your practice, you had no projects?
Yeah, pretty much. So we were just doing a lot of presentations. We just met a lot of people, and a lot of people are honest enough to tell us, I have nothing to offer you, and we are not doing anything right now. So and we were a new practice. So when there were established architects who were struggling for work, that reduced our chances of getting any meaningful work by that much more. So we pretty much did a lot of pitches. We made a lot of presentations. We built our portfolio because there was, we had that 6 to 8 months of buffer that we built in financially when we set up the practice. And we had kind of anticipated that it will take us 6 to 8 months to land our first a decent project. So in many ways, this time was very useful for us to just build a portfolio and to learn about the context. I mean, in hindsight, I think if we had got a project as soon as we set up the practice, the amount of mistakes we would have probably made in that project because we never had time to pick up these things would probably have hurt us more than 6 months of sitting idle and just developing your skills.
Thanks a lot, Kishore sir, for sharing it. I think architect Sriram sir and Pramod sir can share a little more about the same, idea about how your practice started as well, or how the initial days were.
Pramod, should I go?
Yeah, Sriram, he said he's the youngest, so I'm the oldest, so you might as well go.
Yeah, so see, I think it's always it's a bumpy road. You can never have anything absolutely flat, straight, going up all the time. You're always going to be having ups and downs. I mean, when I say this, it sounds so cliched, but it's true, And KSM, our firm, is going to be 30 years this December. We have also seen so many ups and downs that we kind of we just look at it down and we say, okay, it's going down, and it surely has to go up because it has always gone up every time it went down. So what is interesting, I really liked what Kishore said, because when he started the Lehman Brothers crash at that time, 2008, there would be many such architecture-led firms which have started probably in January or maybe in 2019 or 2018, and they will be having the same situation as what Kishore and Biju went through. I would just say that, I don't want to go too far back into history because, it almost is prehistoric when you talk about something 30 years ago. And we're not even reached Pramod's experience right now. So what I would say is that, you just need to tighten up, and every dip makes you really smarter and wiser when you come out of it. You really learn. And again, you probably, everybody has heard this from their parents and some of their seniors and so on. The fact is, it is true. I mean, it's not just a cliche, but it is true. You get so much more aware of the things that could go wrong, that you are just more careful. You need to be more careful. So I think it's nothing to, today you're going through a really tough time. So it is tough going right now, but it has to go up. And I realized this opportunity to really, strengthen your resolve and say, I will come through this. I will come through this smarter and fitter, so that, I'll be able to handle pressures like this better.
Thank you, sir. I think now it's Pramod sir's time to share something about his practice as well, being the so-called oldest of the three firms.
Well, if I tell you of all the ups and downs,
Sir?
Practice, it be a whole tome.
You wouldn't be here, Pramod.
Sir, 1 minute. I think it's a little disturbing. 1 minute.
Every rounds that we've had in our career. Can you hear me? Hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I were to list all the ups and downs, it will be a whole webinar, right? So I will just say that ups and downs are part of everybody's career. And believe me, one thing, you always begin with a down. Every practice begins with a down. It doesn't begin with an up. So you're always battling from the very beginning. And as long as you've got your head screwed right and you don't have aspirations that are actually holding you down and expectations that govern your move forward, you will never be disappointed. So coming back to 2008 and Lehman Brothers, we were 47 people in the office, right? I didn't know what my left hand was doing, what my right hand was doing. all kinds of things. We had team leaders and everything. When it struck, that was the time we decided that this office needs to break up into smaller offices, and each of these associates who I had set up their own practices and gave them time to set up their practices. So we looked at that as being a positive, where you create more offices, people who've had experience with you, people who would do great work. And that was, I think, positive. So every downhill is a positive because it gives you a time to think. Every uphill doesn't give you time to think. You're running, you're racing, you're trying to deliver. So I think every downhill is a positive aspect for me. So I don't think a layman or today is going to be any different. The only thing that I would think about is that today, if work from home becomes the way to do things, we as a social animal need social contact. And an office gets a culture by the way people work together. So if you are going to be on Zoom, on webinars and things like that, you're not going to create a culture. So I'm just thinking maybe like SARS, COVID will just disappear in 6 months' time.
No, that's very true. This is just a virus, and I think we should look at it as just a virus, which is going to definitely dwindle away in some time. I just wanted to ask about one, a slightly interesting story that Pramod sir had shared. You said the first, I think yesterday you had said, what was the first bread and sambar story? I think you should just say it. There are a lot of young practices that are listening to this conversation. We had around more than 100 architects listening to this, who are all young, and we had personal young architecture firms that said, we're really struggling. We don't know how to pay our rents. This time, we've all put up the offices. So I think you can just share a few minutes about that would be a little more encouraging, I believe.
I said, yeah, that's the down. Not to boast, but when me and my wife came down to Madras, it was Madras then, lovely name, in 1985, we were the only students from NID and School of Architecture SEPT. And to get a project, people asked, what have you built? Nobody knew us. So first project I got was adding a toilet to another architect's building or adding an extension to somebody else's building. And then trying to convince a 10-year-old boy that what I'm designing for him and his parents was good. He would ask me questions, right? So there were these kind of issues. But all through, we were struggling. And the thing that you said is it's not a story, it's actually true. I don't think anybody knows of Drive-In Woodlands. It was a lovely place, fantastic social public space. We made friends with a waiter there. He would give us free sambar, and we'll buy a Britannia bread loaf and come in for a meal. And that was our food for, I don't know how long. It just happened. But we were happy. We were happy. The bread and sambar tasted as good as maybe today's biryani or tomorrow's something else, right? So I think it's the positivity that you bring in your thinking that actually helps you go through all these small bumps in life. You make the bump bigger. You make the bump bigger in your mind.
And the same thing, I think, when I spoke to Sriram sir also last, they had set up their own office, I think, after 2 decades, I believe, after the practice has been established. So just a word of, something that I feel looking at the 3 people that we're speaking to, life is always going to have lots of ups and downs. We should remain positive and we should enjoy the moments when we are down as well. I think that's something that I really take back. We will have, we'll take 2 more questions. We'll move on to the next question, which has been a lot, something that's been asked a lot by a lot of different people. How do you think the architecture work will be affected after the grave mismanagement of migrant laborers during this pandemic? I would also like to know how the construction industry would change in terms of design, in terms of construction technology. If architect Sriram can, talk about it, put in a few thoughts, and then I think also the other people as well.
Yeah. What we're seeing is terrible. It's happening all across the country. But the thing is, this has been happening now for at least in my memory, I think it's at least 15, 20 years. I have been seeing migrant labor, and their lot has not improved from then till now. and we can just see what it is. So I think it is a sad state of affairs that, none of us could really, nobody even thought that this was an issue until we're seeing it now on our television. So that is something, it's a failure of us as a nation, at least towards these people who are building all our structures. Right? So that is one side. And there is a whole socio-political aspect to this thing, which I don't think it's probably that we would be able to discuss this over here. This webinar. There are some states in India which where our education and the affordability of the states are better than some of the other states, which is why many of our youth do not want to get into construction and becoming construction labor and so on. So we have to import construction labor from other states. For them, it's livelihood. So that is the crux of the problem. But setting aside this, what I'm saying is, I sincerely believe, this is my thought, what I feel is that I think hereafter we are going to be we will be trying to get less labor intensive as much as possible. See, our entire construction industry is highly dependent on labor forces. But if you see in many parts of the world, not very far from India, they're all mechanized. And it's, I think the time will come now when we will see more and more of mechanization of our construction sites. And when I say mechanization, I'm not talking about prefabricated buildings. Maybe that's also possible. But there is going to be a lot of machines and equipment which would reduce your labor force. And that is going to become a necessity because now we'll be having a labor shortage for sure. And if people cannot travel easily from one state to another, now we are talking about construction to resume and sites to resume, economy to roll back. For that to happen, you need construction to happen. And how would you do it without people? So builders and developers and clients, various clients, industrialists, they'll all begin to say that, look, if people are not available, let's get some machines. You have seen it here, I've seen it. It was available, so just go ahead and work with the cheapest rate that is available. So I think we are going to be seeing a lot of mechanization, and the future generation, I mean, the younger architects who are here, for them, it's going to be a norm to see more machines on the construction sites rather than more labor like what we have been on the sites. So to that extent, I think it's going to be a new learning, which the current set of young architects going forward are going to be used to, and older guys like us will have to really learn and come up to speed with what is happening. So like Pramod had said earlier, and even Kishore was saying, there's always an opportunity in. So I think even though it appears very sad what we're seeing, and it is sad, we are going to be seeing a change to the culture of construction. This is my opinion. I don't know what Pramod and Kishore feel about this.
I think I would request Architect Kishore to add a few words. You've been working on really large projects across different cities right now. Now you have projects in Chennai, Bangalore, and also in Kerala. How do you think your design projects would be affected because of this labor issue and the adaptation of new technology? Like Sriram sir said, brief itself might change, and we might have to adapt new, less labor-intensive works. What are your thoughts on that? Handling projects which are from different cities and different people.
Yeah, so like I was saying, we've already started to see the impact or the introduction of technology into large-scale projects, for a few years now. So the whole idea of using system formwork and building buildings in concrete came out of the fact that we were not able to get buildings built fast enough, and the dependence on manual labor was actually leading to poorer quality of construction, which is when systems like the Maiwan technology, etc., came in. So I think we will see, at least for the larger scale projects, we are seeing a larger push towards that kind of a technology. We will also start seeing a lot of focus on drywall constructions, on prefabricated technology to a certain extent. So there's a lot of technology already out there, and there's enough work that's already been done. It's only a matter of our adapting it, and I think that's where the main challenge is. How do we as architects, marry this new construction process, which thrives on standardization and repetition, like system formwork or drywall or prefab, the basically the economy of scale, and what it makes it so attractive to the market is the fact that it's cheaper because it can be standardized and repeated. Now, how does an architect engage with that? I mean, how do we, as a creative profession, as creative professionals, how does our fraternity kind of make sure that our designs are not taken over by technology and become subservient in that sense, to the to this whole idea of repetition and standardization, because it's a matter of time. I mean, we cannot deny the fact that prefab buildings are will be the future, drywall construction will be the future, and system formwork is already here. So the biggest challenge, I guess, for our fraternity is to see how do we hold on to the whole design soul of our profession and our process, in the midst of all this, rapid changes in construction technology. And I think that's where a lot of young architects and students can actually focus on how these technologies can actually be worked with without really compromising or giving up on any of the design ideologies or ideas that one may have.
Very true, very true. I think it's time we look back and we figure out these things. We don't stop them saying, this is technology, I'm not going to, know it.
Absolutely.
We need to definitely adapt to it. We need to integrate that into the project as well.
I need to bring one point in.
Yes, sir. Please.
The question was migrant labor. And
Yeah.
from migrant labor, we went to technology, construction, etc. So as architects, when we go to our site, do we even recognize the barbender, the mason, the woman who carries the brake, etc.? We don't, right? They are unseen to us. You don't appreciate their work. You don't pat them on the shoulder, right? They're unseen. So we are at fault. I've had instances where on the traffic signal, a guy on a bike will come and stop me and say, tap my window and ask me, sir, do you know me? I was your maestri in that project. So you need to have that humanity with the team that is working on site, right? We didn't have, I don't think many of us have that. I don't think many of us allow that to happen. We seem to be demigods walking around everywhere. We have to change our position. We're just simple architects, yeah. We have our flaws. We're humans, right? So that will make a difference. So when we go to our sites, we demand to see what kind of housing they're getting. For a long time, children used to play. Until a law came, we were fighting. We were saying, no, children should not be there at site. We would stop work at site if children were playing at site. Now, that is the kind of sensitivity you need to have to people who are not lucky to be born where you were born. Simple. Your luck is where you were born.
True. Very true, sir. That's, I think, something that we should all learn from, and we should definitely look back into. Have we looked at our laborers? Have we spoken to them? Have we, like sir said, have we looked at what kind of housing facilities they've been given? But most of the time we are in the air, and I think that all the three practices that you're speaking to have that as a very important role in their individual practices. So thanks a lot for highlighting that question, sir, and bringing that in. Many comments have come here about, some of the questions. I'm just going to ask one of them again. So Harimohan Pillai sir again says, I think architects must come together post these days to ensure a good deal for migrant workers. I think we should definitely first acknowledge them within our sites. There is one more person who said, do you think from urban to rural, will we be moving from urban to rural sites? So I think I'll put it as the next question itself that I've asked myself. What is your take on the density that we already have in the city? And do you think that density will change? Do you think that the way we've been living will change? I leave it to any of you to answer, because there has been, I'll just elaborate that question here, since it's a lot of comments. Everyone is thinking that this virus, this pandemic is going to shift and is going to change a lot of things. And what are your opinions about that? How do we look at it? Any of you, one of you? I'll start with Kishore itself. You know, you've been working on housing intensely. So do you really think that this pandemic is going to change the way we've been building and change the way we've been, like, some people have asked, how are theaters and malls going to be redone, or are they going to be changed? Are we giving the pandemic a bigger role? Are we making it a little big than it should be?
I think right now there is so much unknown about the whole virus and potential cure, etc., that we are just kind of allowing it to build a lot of these kind of doomsday scenarios in our head. So I would not. I mean, frankly, none of us can predict the future, but I would not really jump the gun and say that everything is going to be very, very different once we emerge from this crisis. I think a lot of what we have today will stay the way it is. What will change is at a very individual level. So you and I will behave differently, but the spaces that are there that will come up in the future will be. I would guess it would be pretty similar to what we already have, because I don't think we can afford to kind of clean the slate and start afresh. At least not a country like ours, where we are constantly in a struggle for resources and finances. So I think we will have to live with what we have. At an individual level, there will be changes. You spoke initially about the movement of people back to the rural areas, and we are seeing that not only with the migrant workers going back, and frankly I really don't know when or if they will come back to urban centers at all after what they've gone through, and I wouldn't blame them for not wanting to come back. But I'm seeing this also even in the more affluent architects themselves in our practice, for example, who are from Erode, from Salem, from Madurai, from Kerala, who have come to Chennai to work with us. And they are now back in their hometowns with their parents because of this pandemic. And a few of them are not comfortable coming back to work in the city as an architect. So it's not only an issue that is specifically restricted to migrant labor. It also pertains to educated, qualified professionals like you and me who may move to the nearest larger city to get into a better job or to get some more exposure. So I think there is a great potential for people to work locally, and it's only a matter of recalibrating our expectations from what we define as a career. So like I was saying, we look at architecture. We shouldn't look at architectural education as a conveyor belt where you finish the education and you become an architect. But it's rather a springboard where you can actually take flight in various directions, and there are so many other avenues open to you rather than just become an architect practicing in a studio. And I think that those avenues is what a lot of these students and young professionals will have to explore going forward.
Thank you, Kishore. If anyone else would like to add anything to that about how the cities will change, or because yesterday we had a conversation, just an information to all the four of us were on a conversation. So I think Pramod sir had mentioned a lot of different viruses that have had much larger impact on the human environment, and has had more mortality rate also. And we've always found a way to come back, and we've always found a cure for it. So it is a humble suggestion from my side also. I feel that is important, that we shouldn't make it to a point that viruses come, it's past all of us, but that is not going to change everything that we've learned. It is not going to break everything away. We're going to come back strong, and we definitely will have new ways to tackle it, and we'll come out of it. Because we are seeing questions in the chat into the panelists saying, how will theaters change? How will malls change? How will schools change? And everything can't change. We should definitely get that. We've already built it, like what Kishore said, we've built it, and we will find a way to resolve things around what we've built. And probably the way we build forward might and will have certain implications, and we will all behave more responsibly. I think end of the day, it all boils down to that. We've all known that it's important to be responsible, from the migrant laborers to the climate change, to, the ups and downs in economy. So that's one thing. I think we will go on to the last question, which is also something that's been pondering a lot of people about the Architects Act judgment. So I would just read it out, what has been written. I leave it to Pramod sir to just give a gist. We are not going to discuss about the Architects Amendment Act for sure, about the changes right now, but I would like Pramod sir to give a brief of what the judgment was. I'll just read out the question. This is how exactly many people have asked and feel the same way. That's how we put it. In this dire situation of a pandemic, the COA is going ahead with the Architects Amendment Act. How do you think that this double attack affect us as architects? So now we're not sure how it's a double effect, but everyone feels that it is going to have a big toll over the economy. So if Pramod sir, you could just brief out about what had happened and what that situation is actually.
I think the Architects Amendment Act by COA is positive for the architects. It's the Supreme Court ruling that is creating problems from everybody, saying that the Act only protects the title architect and anybody can design and build buildings. Okay, so that I think is right. The reading is right because of the fact that the way the Act has been worded in 1972, and none of us have been able to do it, to change it. But I think you must understand one thing. We are a new profession. In the history of mankind, the history of India, we're a new profession. People were building without architects, right? Masons were building, Sthapatis were building, everybody was building without architects, right? So if you look at the city around you, what percentage of buildings around you are designed by architects? Very nominal. We cater to 2% of the population, right? So until and unless we as a profession are willing to spread ourselves and make ourselves valuable to society, that they think that our profession is worthy of being looked at, sure. Like there are doctors and quacks, there'll be architects and quack architects also, right? So I don't think you should be worried about that. You should be worried about what is it that I can do. You can't say, because of this, I can't do this. Because of that, I can't do this. Because that means you're not putting up your foot in front. You're taking recourse in somebody else's this thing. So I don't think that's going to impact anything. And then tell me this title or etc., etc. What is it? What difference it make? For a long time in Chennai, we were responsible for so many things, and we were made to be responsible for so many things. So we fought the CMDA and we got a verdict in our favor and things like that. So the time comes, we will go forward. This whole problem is between engineering and architecture and all of that. It's just architects, you're one part of a team. And as we go forward in time, that team member in you is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller, right? So therefore, I don't think there's something to worry about. It's like the High Court in Tamil Nadu closing Tasmac shops and the Supreme Court opening it. So don't worry. It doesn't make any sense what the court says. So don't worry about it. Don't worry about it at all, because of the fact that as long as you have the skill set and as long as you have the passion and you can deliver, you need to deliver. And that delivery must be in a manner where it is appreciated by the person who occupies the environment that you build. That's the only way it can happen. So I don't
Thank
think...
you, sir.
Yeah.
I think that is all that we would like to know about the judgment and everything as well. I think we have answered almost all the questions. We've covered a lot of different ground. So I would like to conclude the entire interactive session with one more question, which is something that students have been asking. In the light of many surveys that's been conducted, we have seen that number of architecture students graduating out and being just architects is very limited. It is reducing day by day, while the architects are moving on to various other fields, allied fields of design, allied fields of product, package, user interface, digital medium. There are so many new fields that architects are moving into. What are your comments about that? Being three strong architecture practices, what do you think about architecture students moving away from architecture and doing something else?
Yeah, can I? So let me start with this. I think one thing that all students of architecture must consider, it's to look at education and architecture as a springboard and not a conveyor belt, like I said earlier. So it has the ability to launch you in different directions and on different flight paths, depending on what you discover about yourself in these 5 years. So the education and architecture straddles diverse fields. I mean, it covers basic design, graphics, art appreciation, humanities, anthropology, and history on one hand. It also trains you in building construction, technical drawing, structural engineering, professional practice. So at the end of this roller coaster, to end up thinking of yourself as having to come out of a conveyor belt to only become an architect, I think that's a little underwhelming and unfair to the process that you have been through. So I always encourage students to use all the exposure that architectural education has given you and to explore diverse fields and find what is it that really excites you. For example, a friend of mine from college, 1 year my junior, he used to design all our t-shirts and graphics for college festivals and NASA events, etc. So when he passed out of college, he started a signage design and fabrication company. And that's where his heart was. That's where his passion was. He loved to do graphics. And he started a very successful signage design and fabrication unit. They used to do signages for a lot of projects, and very successful at that. So another student of architecture I know in Chennai, he passed out a year or two back, and then he has taken time to study exposed wire cut brickwork, pigmented concrete, cement plaster finishes, and he is now executing projects using this technique, which is highly skilled. It needs a lot of attention to detail. So these are just two examples, and in today's digital universe, there are just simply so many avenues. I mean, right from graphics, photography, writing, structural design, technology. I mean, there are managing projects. The options are tremendous. So I think once you're able to figure out what is it that really excites you, I think you just take that and run. And I think being an architect is only one option out of so many others that you can choose at the end of the 5 years. So these are just two examples of people that I know that I wanted to share.
Thank you, Kishore sir. Yeah, I think would you like to add anything else, sir?
Yeah, what Kishore is saying, see, it reflects a little on our architectural educational system. Because, like we all know that there are so many, like if you use architectural education as a springboard to get into various professions, sadly our architectural curriculum tries to focus and make everyone practicing architects. So I think that is something that our educational system, architecture education system, really needs to. I'm not sure if that's really a part of our webinar today, but there is a lot of encouragement. I mean, we always encourage, as practicing architects, we encourage people with multiple talents and say, please look at a career option in anything that that you're passionate about. But it would be great if the architectural education curriculum would channelize their talents when they see it, in the various years as they grow in architectural education. So they're told that this is probably a line that you could look at as an alternate, or to go along with your architectural education, you can do this. Like Kishore had mentioned, so many allied fields that you can branch off into. So it's another raging debate as far as architecture education is concerned, but people should follow their passion, and I think that's what our architecture education really gives you an opportunity to explore.
But I think this space in the house. Yes, sir, Pramod sir, please.
I just need to add something. Here, all young architects dream of success, aspirations, all very quickly. We are a world who wants everything very fast, right? It's like that. I don't think if you have those as your value system, you will go anywhere. You got to build it up slowly. You got to work hard on it. You got to learn. You got to fall. You got to climb, right? All of these things are important. I have kids who've come in as interns and I ask them, what do you want? Sir, second year, I want a BMW. So I asked them, walk down the stairs that you came by, right? So it's this aspirational society and the success society that creates all the pressures on the young. Get rid of it. This lockdown period, all of you would have thought, hey, I don't need too much here. I don't need to go to the mall. I don't need to do all of this. All your expenses came down, right? You suddenly realize, wow, all that you need is very little. And all that you were looking for was all just, momentary sense of, happiness, right? So if students begin to think like this and say it's hard work, we will work, it'll grow, strong foundations hold you. The guy who talks out from the top of the towers shouting out will be heard for a minute. But if he doesn't have anything of value, no, everybody will stop hearing him. So I think that's very important. Our young are restless to become successful. I don't know what success is.
I think, yeah, I've also had a junior of mine who's now an architect who's turned into a magician, actually. So he's a full-time magician and he's doing really well. He charges a bomb for a show and he really does really exciting work. And he's able to bring magic and architecture together. It's an amazing combo. I think I'll definitely have him talk to a lot of people. So it was really nice to have all the three of you here together. I've met all the three of you personally, but this is the first time we're all connecting on a webinar. It's 5:30 and we've addressed a lot of questions. My sincere request to all the attendees that a lot of questions have come in. We've consolidated them onto topics. So please feel free to send us the questions and we will again try to respond to it with more discussions coming. And I would like to definitely thank Pramod sir, Sriram sir and Kishore sir for taking time out. And we had actually discussed about it and it's really nice. I think this 2 hours was very useful, gave a lot of hope and a lot of positivity to many students and architects who've been listening to this entire webinar. That is something that we believe needs to be there. As an institution also, we want our students to feel very positive about this. We don't want them to feel negative. We don't want them to fall back. We should definitely instigate that positivity. And I definitely believe that this webinar has helped. I hope that is how this is, definitely helped all of us. So I thank all of you once again. Thank you for accepting the invitation. And it was a really interesting communication. And I think we will have more such discussions to enhance the outlook of students. Thank you, Pramod sir. Thank you, Kishore sir. And thank you, Sriram sir, for taking time out. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Reeves.
Thank you.
And to all the attendees, this is Future of Architecture, Chapter 1. We will be having, since this has really turned out to be a massive event, we are looking at doing something a little more. We have not decided it, but we will keep all of you posted about what comes next. Over to Architect Ayman to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Ponma days, huh? You're not going to give us Ponma days?
So we are couriering it to you, all of you directly, and it will be reaching via link. Link is the app we all use to deliver stuff.
Sorry.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. With that, we've come to an end to this session. And if you guys have any questions, as sir said, please mail us the questions and we'll respond to you as soon as possible. So that was a great session and I'm sure it has inspired all the attendees and the RVS team. I would like to thank our guests who took their time to grace us with their unique points of view. It has been an honor to host you all. I would also like to thank RVS Chennai institution for giving students an opportunity to host such a wonderful and meaningful event. And finally, a big thank you to all our participants in the Zoom and YouTube link platform. Thank you for joining us and making this event a great success. So we will be sending out a form to all the participants for their participation certificate. For future updates on upcoming webinars, please follow us on Instagram and keep an eye on our website. Thank you. Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Thank you all. Thank you once again. Thank you, three of you. Thank you, sir. It was great to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you.